Hello, my darlings, and welcome. You may be asking, why do I have Dune Messiah right here and also here? Well, I wanted to talk about one of my biggest pet peeves, and that's when people call this masterpiece an epilogue of the first Dune. Now, if you say that, don't worry, we're not enemies, but I just don't get it. Much of that feels like it comes from the length of the book, right? The length versus the actual content of the book. Now, if you look at Dune, Dune is much more of a sci-fi adventure and battle and has the hero's journey. There's a lot going on there that is very traditional in terms of how people normally see storytelling. Now, by the way, there's some things about Dune that are a little different than traditional storytelling, some things that didn't work for me. But this is fundamentally a different story and approach to this world. And so calling this an epilogue, I feel like it is part of why people misunderstand this story. And not that those who do think it is an epilogue don't like the book, because you could think it's an epilogue and still understand the story. But typically this book is seen as the one that is most misunderstood in the Dune series and sort of changed the way Dune would then go on. But in terms of this, as I said, this is a fundamentally different story, right? This is the after all that came after Dune, right? It's the fast forwarding of. It's the furthest thing from an epilogue because what this is doing is giving us a completely different Paul, a Paul that is saying, did this go too far? Is this exactly what I wanted? Was what I wanted taken by fanatics and the religious followers and just taken to a place it should have never gone. So this is Paul grappling with the horrors of messiahship, the horrors of the lengths in which people will take religion, right? So to me, I would say the Dune 1 was sort of like, if we look at it in Christianity, was like the story of Jesus Christ, and the his dying for the sins and then resurrection. And then Doom Messiah was kind of him coming back and being like, whoa, these Christians of today, especially following Trump, are not the love thy neighbor Christians and the ones who would feed the poor and help the sick and do all the goods for the path of Christ that I put forward. These Christians are very much different from who I was and what I was preaching. And that wouldn't be an epilogue of the first story of Jesus. That would be a completely different story trying to tell a different side of all this and where it all went wrong. And I think for Dune Messiah, it is just a masterclass of dialogue and characters working through the many different philosophical aspects that come into being a Messiah and power. And this is just, wow, this is one of my favorite books ever. And I think we need to continue to sort of push people into seeing it in a different light. Because no, this was not the Dune 2 that people wanted from the first book. I would argue it's much better than it ever could have been. Thank you, darlings.